Panther Nation podcast. Yeah. Let's go. Yeah. Oh, cut it. Cut right. And I would like to introduce one of the hottest podcasts in Carolina history. Let's go. Yo, talk less chat. We got time to chop it up. Talking analytics and fantasy draft. You know what's up. Panther Nation representing, cause this is where we talk that. Talk that's so incredible. Make them rewind that talk back. Pause. Talking Panthers football, we discussing it all. On and off the field, you know exactly who to call. You know we the #1 podcast. Competition is non-existent, you need to stop that. Pause. It's an honor to be a Panther fan. Pause. At Bank of America, that is where we ball. Coming to the jungle, then you gonna feel the pause. Winning the trophy for the city, it is the cause. Black, white, and blue, we going Carolina strong. And this is the conversation where everyone belongs. Discussing all the numbers and topics, you know we got it. We the hottest podcast and we poppin', let's go.
All right, what's going on, guys? This is David, one half of PNP, and it is now July. It is fantasy time. We're gonna do half today, which isn't really gonna be too much of a half. And so today we're gonna focus on quarterbacks, tight ends, defenses, and kickers. So I will take any and all questions regarding those things. And next Friday, I'm going to try to shoot for 8:00. We're going to go over running backs, wide receivers, and flex considerations. I wanted to put those two together because that's typically the flex spots when it comes to that. So that's what we're going to roll with. What's up, Drea? What's up, Grim Reaper? For those who are watching, I know it's Friday night, but Friday, you ain't got no job, you got shit to do. So let me see here. I'm gonna put the banner. I want you guys, man, if you haven't already, become a patron because it's gonna get fun. I'm gonna start answering questions. I'll answer fantasy questions in the Patreon, especially during the season. It was pretty good value. Best place to reach me when it comes to that. I'll answer a decent chunk on Twitter. But, I'm primarily focused for my patrons, and in the Patreon chat, man, we start going to different layers about the approach of how to handle certain things and what to do. So people can win some money in some of these leagues. Maybe we can win some money in some of on Underdog Fantasy, and shout out to them. Go to underdogfantasy.com and use the code PNP. And you can get that $100 match deposit, get into some best ball tournaments. These are the opportunities to do it. Before the injuries, take advantage and leverage some of that when things happen, like folks who didn't catch the Gronk retirement, and they have the pick'ems for multiple sports, baseball, WNBA, UFC. So go for it. So we're going to start with the basic premise, right? We're going to go ahead and get this ball going regarding, I'm going to start with defense, special teams, and kickers. And the reason why I want to do that is, is a pretty simple aspect when it comes to those two positions, right? So the first thing that I've always felt like when it comes to those two positions, last 2 rounds of the draft, I've always been that way when it comes to that. That's a position you take in the last 2 rounds of the draft. A lot of some leagues that I play in now, there's no kicker. So kicker is probably the most random thing on earth. Like, I think there's some people that'll take Justin Tucker early, but my only advice to you when it comes to kickers is try to grab kickers on high-powered offenses. I know you're saying, well, that doesn't make sense. It's about the extra points. But in my opinion, it's about the opportunity. And if you have high-powered offenses, you're going to get more opportunity. Because you don't want a kicker with a terrible defense. Like, if you had a pick, you want to get a kicker that's in a pretty good offense if possible. Those are the ones that tend to be near the top of the heap. There's a couple that aren't. There's a couple with average offenses, or go with a kicker with a team that you know is going to have a strong run game. So if you think Carolina's going to have a strong run game, go with Carolina's kicker. But kickers are very random. Some days they might get you 0. Some days they'll get you 10. There aren't too many. There's some kickers that are somewhat consistent, but if you're so dependent on that position, that's the moment where you're going to end up losing. And that's part of the reason why I no longer use kickers. Now, as for the defense and special teams, I think it's a safe bet that the Buffalo Bills is probably going to be the first defense taken off the board. You got the Saints, the Colts, the Bucks. Those are pretty much the top tier defenses from a fantasy standpoint. But two things you got to keep in mind. One, you get defensive points. The bread and butter of defensive points are sacks and turnovers. That's your bread and butter. In standard fantasy leagues, sacks and turnovers is your bread and butter from that standpoint. So when you start taking that into consideration, that's what you need to think about when you pick your defenses. And there's always a defense that's the bottom 10 the previous year that ends up jumping in the top 10. The Bills got the total package. I mean, but like I said, you want to try to get a team that's going to produce a lot of turnovers. Like, I think a lot of folks would automatically default to the Rams being the first one you take, but you got to consider a couple of things. The Rams give up points too. Like, they got a lot of all-stars, but they give up points as well. So if you think certain teams is going to be like a sack lead, and the other factors, you got to remember there's a special teams aspect of it as well. So when you have punt returns for touchdowns, kick returns for touchdowns, turnovers that turn into touchdowns, like that, though, like, you want to get a defense or a special team that's more opportunistic. I mean, the Bills are the Bills, man. Like, they're an opportunistic defense. Sean McDermott operates an opportunistic defense. So when you take that into consideration, that's what you want. Like, some people are like, well, I want to draft a defense that doesn't give up that many points. That's not the way to do it. You want to draft a defense that's going to likely get you more sacks, turnovers, and sometimes those things turn into touchdowns. You want to get you. That's what you want in your life. The Ravens are interesting, but once again, like, I think we got to go off you got to remember it's about being opportunistic. The Ravens defense ain't the same defense they used to be, but we'll see what happens, man. It's like, there's always a debate when it comes to that on what defense to get. But I went with I went discussing defense, special teams, and kickers first, because that's typically going to be the quickest thing to have a discussion point on, because, like, you shouldn't put too much into it. Normally I would stream a defense. I would just stream defenses based on their matchups. Like, if you guys think that the Jets are going to be terrible, this is just for the sake of an example, I would try to get whichever defense plays the Jets every week. That's what I would do. Or I would typically I would have like a stack of 3 or 4 defenses that are out in the wire, and those are the ones I would shoot for, and that's what I would try to do, and I would just rotate them every single week. Every week. That's what I would normally do. And that's the way I've been doing it. Like, I don't want to spend draft capital. And sometimes you have situations where the defense that you draft hits, and then you're good. Yeah, I think the Washington Commanders, I was about to call them the team. I think the Commanders is probably the most underrated defense in fantasy football, because Ron wants to get to the quarterback and Ron wants to turn the ball over. Most underrated defense. And I don't think a lot of folks are talking about them. This is one of the ones that could potentially hop up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think Washington has that potential to hop up. I like the football team a lot. I like the Commanders a lot from that aspect. The Bears, my thing about the Bears, we're rolling with it. We're rolling that they're going to have a good defense, but I don't know if they are. We're going to see. We're going to see. All right. So I'll go. Let's have the discussion point. And guys, just feel free to ask questions in the chat. I'll get to them as I can. As for the tight end position, there's pretty much one tight end you want. And there's a couple tight ends that are kind of like, and then after that, it's going to be there's one tight end you want to get, and that's called Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce is going to be number one tight end in fantasy again, and he potentially has a chance to be like the top receiver in fantasy. Like, he is a first round grade type of tight end. If he's sitting there in the middle to the bottom of the first, you have a very good debate on your hands on who you want to take. Because the bottom line is this: Travis Kelce is going to be the top, barring injury. He should be projected to be the top tight end in fantasy with Patrick Mahomes. Now, Mark Andrews is interesting. He should take a big jump up with Marquise Brown getting traded away, with Hollywood Brown getting traded away. I think he's going to end up being the top guy. So he could probably end up being the second best tight end in fantasy from that standpoint. Then after that, it becomes kind of interesting. Like Darren Waller, I'm worried about him a lot. But the thing is, tight ends are such a wasteland from that standpoint. Let's see here. Let me get into here. All right. So yeah, dynasty, but man, like Schultz is the top 10 tight end in fantasy. And I mean, if you keep it a buck. Another guy that we're not talking about enough that could have top 10 upside, Irv Smith from the Minnesota Vikings, and Albert O from the Denver Broncos. I'm leaning towards Irv Smith being the sleeper for me more than Albert O, only because of the offensive coordinator that came from the Packers. Didn't necessarily use the tight end nearly as much as they could have, but they did utilize the tight end. And it isn't going to take much to jump into the top 10. One guy that I'm definitely afraid of this season is Dawson Knox. I'm a little bit afraid of him. He was money last year, but I'm a little bit afraid of him now. Kittle's top 5 like he always is. But, tight ends, and I've done a video on it, they are a wasteland. And I can't forget Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts, legit, man. So I can't forget about him. He probably has the potential to go be top 3. Mariota will throw it to his tight end. I don't know if I completely agree with that. I think with the wide receiver situation in Kansas City, I think Kelce's still the guy. But I think Mark Andrews is much closer. And yeah, Cole Kmet's interesting too. He's got top 10 upside. But I say all this to say, I'm worried about Dawson. I'm worried about Dawson Knox, man. I'm gonna be honest. I'm worried about Dawson Knox only because I think he could still be. I think he was primarily I think he's gonna transition to being more of an end zone guy, a red zone target. So you could have games where he'll have like 3 targets, and he might only get you like 1 catch for 3 yards. Or you might have games where you have like 3 targets and get you 2 touchdowns. So I think if you're ready to deal with that volatility at that tight end spot, that's fine. I mean, but the bottom line is Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews is going to give you advantage every week. Those 2 guys are going to give you advantage every week, every single week. That's who's going to give you the advantage. Tonyan, yeah, but Tonyan was balling at times, but not all the time. You can consider that maybe Aaron Rodgers will leverage Tonyan more now since Devontae Adams is gone. I mean, we can start coming up with that rationale. Gesicki, man, Dawson Knox or Gesicki. I'm gonna roll with. Because the problem is for Miami, Gesicki at best, Gesicki's probably 3rd. In Buffalo, Knox is probably might be 3rd. Could be 4th though. Probably might be 4th option. So I'm gonna go with Gesicki, but only because, but at this point in the game, it's kind of a crapshoot. Like when you start thinking about tight ends, when you start to get low down in the total poll, it gets to the point of crapshoot. Dallas Goedert is going to be interesting as well for Philadelphia. Like tight ends are always a wasteland. So depending on where your draft position is, I could see Travis Kelce go as high as 3. But I don't see him exiting. If you are able to get Travis Kelce in the second round, you fell into a gold mine. He should be gone by the end of the first round, even in 12-team leagues and probably in 10-team leagues as well. So if Travis Kelce's sitting there for you in the second round, you have to take him. Don't care what your circumstance is. You have to take him. I do like Goddard. I do like Goddard for sure. I do like Goddard a lot. So from that standpoint, you have to consider how you want to attack it. Because in my eyes, I don't see Travis Kelce leaving the first round, and I don't see Mark Andrews getting past the third. If possible, he might not get past the second. So when you take those things into account, you just got to make an executive decision. If you have that much faith about Mark Andrews, if you think Mark Andrews is closer to Travis Kelce than I do, then yeah, if you feel confident about it, take him in the second. But for me, I don't think, unless I get Kelce in the first, I don't think I'm going to start thinking about taking Mark Andrews until the third round. Right here is Kyle Pitts. I like Kyle Pitts. Think Kyle Pitts is going to get an opportunity. He might end up being the top receiver in that team. So I like Kyle Pitts. He could potentially end up in the top 3. He could end up being one of the top 2 guys. But let me tell you something. It's a mystery after you get past a couple of tight ends. And I'm very concerned about Waller, guys. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. Yup. Especially if Ritter plays, that's going to help Pitts more than hurt him, because rookie quarterbacks like to go to their tight end. So that's going to help more than hurt. From my standpoint, I think that'll help more than hurt. So when you take that into consideration, that's what I would roll with. Yeah, I mean, with Dak as the quarterback, it becomes interesting. I will say that. I like Schultz too, but once again, it goes back to Dallas. Target wise, where, like, for me, when it comes to tight ends, in a perfect world, you want to get a tight end that is that's the top 2 targets of the offense. And Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews fit that bill. George Kittle fits that bill. Kyle Pitts fits that bill. You know what I'm saying? So from that standpoint, you need to take those things into consideration. But you would think about somebody like a Dalton Schultz, where would he fall? All right. I think he'll get less targets than probably the running backs. He'll get less targets than CeeDee Lamb. He'll get less targets than my guy. God, man, I think Wilson's still there. He'll get less targets than him too. Whoever's going to be the number 2 over there he's going to get less targets than. So at best, he's going to probably be the 4th option when he's on the field. So you got to take that into account. So you think with Amari Cooper out, Schultz is going to benefit? I don't know about that, man. And we'll talk about wide receivers next week. But I think Dallas's number 2 wide receiver is probably going to benefit more. Is going to take advantage of it. Oh, Selger's not on Cowboys anymore? Well, yeah, all right. So now you're gonna have me go. Now you're gonna make me pull up Dallas' roster, because now I'm intrigued. What does it look like? What does it look like? Yeah. So what does it look like? Oh dear. All right. Oh, you said the rookie, so Tolbert. Oh boy. Oh, Tolbert might be a sleeper though. Tolbert might be a sleeper for that. Yeah, they're gonna start Tolbert. Yo, Tolbert could break out because Dak is gonna have the opportunity. Tolbert could be an undraftable guy that could end up being a stud. But we'll get into wide receivers next week. So I can understand why you got Schultz so high. Oh, he went to Miami? Oh boy. Yeah, man. I'm at the well. Tua likes his tight end, so I think Gesicki is gonna get some love. Yeah, if Schultz getting 100, if you guys think Schultz is getting 100 targets, then yeah, he's gonna be a top 5 tight end. I'm afraid of Darren Waller, guys. Let me be clear. I'm like with Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow. I can't trust Waller at this point. I think a lot of folks think Waller's a top 5 tight end. I ain't one of them. I'll probably put Schultz ahead of him, especially after what you just convinced. You guys kind of convinced me that maybe I'm beating up on Schultz too damn much. Yeah, Michael Gallup is good to miss a couple games. So we'll see what happens with Dallas, because Mike McCarthy wants to throw the ball. So they're gonna get that opportunity. And speaking of throwing the ball, let's talk about the quarterback position, guys. Now, last year, I said that Josh Allen was the number 1 quarterback in fantasy. I would take him over Patrick Mahomes. And I think I got a little bit of blowback about that. Folks thought that was kind of crazy, but he ended up being the top guy in fantasy last year in the quarterback position. So that being said, when you talk about quarterbacks now, I'm sticking with Josh Allen as my top quarterback in fantasy. That being said, I don't think you guys been watching me. You guys know, my belief is there's 4 guys that I would like to get my hands on. Sooner than later. All right. Like, I don't think I want to start looking for these 4 guys until I get to the 3rd round. And those 4 guys are Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Lamar Jackson. Those 4 guys. I want to get my hands on one of those guys. If I can't get my hands on one of those guys, then I'm going to be waiting a while to go after a quarterback. But those are the 4. Once again, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson. Those are my 4. All right. Now, that being said, I know there's going to be a debate on where we're looking at when it comes to these quarterback positions, and that's respectable from that standpoint. But I think the gap, like after you get past that top 4, the gaps between 5 and 12, 5 and 13 are closer than you think. Like, I think people are high on Joe Burrow. I'm not as high as on Joe Burrow as most from that standpoint. I think Russ has the potential to be a top 10 quarterback this year in fantasy. A guy that I'm very afraid of, and I know it's going to be hard for you to hear this, but then again, he didn't really have the greatest season last year either, is Aaron Rodgers. I'm afraid of Aaron Rodgers this year. If I get Aaron Rodgers super late, then I'm cool. Like, I mean, super late. Like, super late. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not going to be the one to try to bank on everything. Like, I know Aaron Rodgers is a Hall of Fame quarterback, and I think he's going to have a good season. But I question whether or not he's going to have a good fantasy season. So now Kirk Cousins is interesting, but Kirk Cousins is always in that teetering top 12 ordeal. But Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott, I think Joe Burrow is going to regress a bit. He's probably going to have a good year, but I'm not going to put him in the big 4. I don't have Joe Burrow in the big 4. I think the big 4 are the ones you take in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. Like, honestly, Josh Allen's your 3rd round quarterback. Mahomes, I would be cool with taking him in the mid 4, early 5 if you really want to get one. I'm afraid of Kyler Murray too, guys. I just want to be clear. I'm afraid of Kyler Murray too. But the big 4 for me are, so if you see like a quarterback run, you might have to make a drastic decision. But don't make that drastic decision unless you're going to get one of those 4. So let's say, for example, somebody takes Josh Allen in the third or the bottom of the second, because I think I could see folks trying to take him at the bottom of the second, but I think I don't think you should touch, if you're going to get the top quarterback, I don't think you want to touch him until the third round. So from that standpoint, let's say Josh Allen is the first quarterback taken in the third round, and then a couple picks, like 2 or 3 picks go by. You still got your pick coming up, and then Patrick Mahomes goes off the board. And then another pick or 2 goes by, and then Herbert goes off the board. At that point, you might have to make a decision on whether or not you want to take Lamar Jackson. So, because the bottom line is this, there's no way Lamar Jackson will be there for you coming back around. So if you want to get Lamar, you're going to have to take that chance and get him. And I know that's going to be a risk, because I think in the first couple of rounds, you want to try to be heavy with the running backs, the wide receivers. And we'll have those discussion points more tomorrow, next week, when I do the show on those positions. But from that standpoint, you really need to start considering what your options are if there's a run of quarterbacks that happen. Now, if the run of quarterbacks happen and there's no opportunity to get Lamar Jackson, then so be it. And then you just need to wait. Like at that point, you need to wait to go get Dak Prescott. You need to wait to go get Jalen Hurts. You need to wait to go get Tom Brady. You need to wait a little bit. Start building the rest of your roster up. Fill up everything else. That's my attitude towards it. Start considering quarterback after you feel comfortable of how your running backs and wide receivers look. Then start considering quarterback. Maybe add a couple depth pieces as well, because you know you're going to have bye weeks. Like I'm thinking, like after you get past the big 4, I don't know if I want to be touching any quarterbacks until like the 8th, 9th round, if you miss out on one of the big 4. So just keep that in mind. Like so but when you want to talk about some of the other quarterbacks, we're talking about, I mean, like I said, you got Dak. I'm not as high on Burrow as most. I think Burrow's a starting QB, don't get me wrong, but I'm just not as high on him from that aspect. But then you have other quarterbacks. I'm definitely like, I'm afraid of Kyler Murray. I understand he's trying to get paid. I'm afraid of him. I'm just straight up afraid of him. And you have to consider this, sir. Kyler Murray is going to be without his top wide receiver for 6 weeks. So keep that in mind. And make sure you guys hit the like button. So keep that in mind as well. Look, man, I don't have Russ as high because I'm afraid. I'm intrigued to see what the new coach is gonna do, Nathaniel Hackett. But Denver has some pretty damn good running backs on their roster, and Russell really needs a good run game to cook. I think they're going to give him an opportunity to swing in Denver, because that's part of the reason why he wanted to get traded there. But I don't know if I'm ready to put Russell Wilson in the big 4. But I will say Russell Wilson is probably going to fall in drafts, because Russell Wilson kind of was on a decline a little bit. So it'll be curious to see how much we got left from that aspect. But Stafford's interesting, but Stafford's pretty much a fringe starter. If you want to talk about a sleeper, Trey Lance is a sleeper. Tua is a sleeper. Matt Ryan is a sleeper. And then, Kirk Cousins is probably going to be a fringe starter. So I don't know if I want to call him a sleeper. But he tends to be near the top of the list, man. Kirk Cousins, that guy, tends to have a habit of being on the top of the list. I don't know if I'm rolling here yet. Might change my mind over time. Yeah, but I will say this: when we talk about wide receivers next week, man, there might be multiple ways to attack the situation at hand. And we'll get into that. We'll get into that next week. It's going to be a dope discussion. I wanted to put those two positions together for a reason. So yeah, it's going to be that's going to be an interesting one, but it's going to be good. So with regards to that, I say you make a call on how you want to handle the positions. Pay attention to the board. Sometimes it might not be a bad thing to avoid the run, especially if you have an opportunity to get 2 RB1s or 2 wide receiver 1s. The folks are out here taking quarterbacks too early. So don't be so Don't be scared if you avoid the run. Just decide, make your decision and stand firm on it. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. I prefer to be the one to start the run, but it is what it is sometimes. All right. So I anticipated this episode was going to be much shorter. I think next week is going to get down and dirty because we got a lot of discussion points to go at, especially with the running backs and wide receiver positions. So to summarize everything, quarterbacks, big four. You want to try to get one of the big four. Like I said, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Lamar Jackson. After that, they're pretty much close together. If you're into, I didn't even talk about streaming. If you're going to stream quarterbacks, I'll name a few for you. I already named a couple, but let me pull up my list real quick. If you're going to stream quarterbacks, Jameis Wilson is interesting, particularly when he's in a shootout type of game. Same goes for Mac Jones. Same goes for Tua, Kirk Cousins. It's probably a fringe starter, but he's streamable for sure. Derek Carr is a sleeper to me. Derek Carr has a potential to potentially end up being a top 5 quarterback in fantasy. From that standpoint. But when you talk about streamers, you're going to have a lot of opportunities to stream for some of these quarterbacks, man. A lot of opportunity. And just remember, you don't have to be a good quarterback to get fantasy football points. Tim Tebow at one point was getting 20 fantasy points a week. So you ain't got to be a good quarterback to get fantasy points. You just gotta be able to run the ball, get touchdowns and things of that sort. I mean, typically I do prefer having a quarterback that can scramble a little bit, that can run the ball. Part of the reason why I have Josh Allen number 1 is because of that. Patrick Mahomes can as well, but he doesn't do it as often, and neither does Justin Herbert. Patrick probably does it more than Justin. But that being said, Lamar, that's his thing. Like, that's what he does. The only concern you got with Lamar Jackson is if he can stay healthy, because he takes a lot of hits. I would not draft Zach Wilson. I wouldn't either. And I know you guys want to talk about Baker Mayfield. And I guess I probably should give some Panthers perspectives on these picks too. So for quarterback, Baker Mayfield, I mean, I think there's probably some opportunities to stream him. I don't think there's any opportunities to start him every week. He could surprise us. But considering what Carolina wants to do from an offensive standpoint, he's a streamer at best. Maybe consider him when you're playing a team that's a high-powered offense. But other than that, he's a streamer. Tight end, and me and Rashad had a whole argument about this from the standpoint with the Panthers. The thing that you got to realize, and I said it then, and I'll say it again. The thing you got to realize is, based on what the talks have been, based on what Matt Rule wants to do, we're not going to throw the ball more than 25 times a game. I think that's the goal. They want to run the ball 30 times a game. So we probably won't throw the ball more than 25 times a game. So let's think about it like this. DJ Moore will probably get 8 to 10 targets. To make it round, we'll say 10. Robbie should get about 5. So we're all right. We're going to throw the ball 15 times. We're already down to 15. Christian McCaffrey will probably get 7 to 10 targets a game. Right? If healthy. 7 to 10 targets. So if he gets the high end of 10 targets, you've already used up all your passing allocation for the game. So you ain't got nothing for the tight ends. The tight ends will be lucky to get 2 or 3 targets a game between them all. So that isn't something that I want to draft. Just my opinion on it. So as for defensive special teams, I think the Panthers' sack numbers are definitely go down with the loss of Hassan Reddick. We'll see what happens with Yetur Gross-Matos. Now we're going to get more playing time. But that being said, I don't think the Panthers' defense is draftable. From that standpoint. And as for kickers, man, I'm not going to answer no question about no kicker. I mean, Justin Tucker's the top. I was always near the top of the heap every week. I mean, that's another position I tend to stream too. unless I get one of the better kickers. I tend to stream the kicker position as well. All right, let me see if there's any questions before I disappear. No questions, just mainly comments. Check the Discord real quick. And if there's nothing in the Discord, I'm going to holla. Let's see here. How are the Ravens better on offense? Lamar Jackson. That's how. Let me change up the banner real quick. Ooh, I didn't get my comments back up. All right. And dropping Terrence. I'm dropping Terrence in fantasy and just going to get him back cheaper. Yeah, that ain't a bad thing. Oh, yeah, I'm starting to remember things as I go. When you talk about keepers, I would keep Travis Kelce. Even if he has a first round grade, he's a keeper. If you got Mark Andrews later rounds, he's a keeper. Same goes for Kittle. Schultz, you probably got him super late. Maybe got him for free agency. Keeper. Goddard, keeper. Yeah, because those folks are pretty low. Waller, let him go back into the pool. Let him go back into the draft pool. Now, as for the quarterback position, you don't keep the defenses and special teams. So as for the quarterback position, the usual suspects, the big four, you got them. You can keep them. Maybe I'll have a show separately to go through those type of debates when we get closer. I do hate Waller this year, bro, because I think Davante Adams chews up his target share big time. I really do. I solely believe that. I think Waller is going to go. Waller's going to take a step back, and due to that, and considering how and we're talking keeper here, right? Considering where you had to take him last year, you probably had to take Waller in the second or the third round last year to get him. I don't think I want to be taking Waller in the second or third round. You do your keepers based on the value of that pick, right? So that's why I said if you got Travis Kelce in the first round, I'm going to have Travis Kelce. He's going to be my keeper, and I got him in the second round. So he can absolutely go by the wayside from that standpoint. Throw him in the Kelce's a keeper, but Waller, you got to throw him out because you probably drafted him in the second or the third round. Unless you got Waller in the 6th or 7th round, he can't be a keeper. So, but we're talking keepers, Jacob. When you talk about keepers, so yeah, absolutely. So, my opinion, you probably gonna have to. Travis Kelce probably gonna have to be taken in the first. So, the way I handle keepers is I look at what grade I have him. So I have Travis Kelce as a first round grade. If I have Travis Kelce on my roster, I'll probably think he's a keeper. All right. Typically, you get to keep 4 or 5 players. He would definitely make my list off the strength because he's probably going to be a wide receiver 1. All right. Now, that being said, you think Waller's gonna hit 1,000 yards receiving? I don't think so, bro. I don't think so, man. I think between Davante Adams and Wentworth. Now, I do agree from the aspect that he might get some more touchdowns, but I don't know if it's worth me saying that he's above, that he should be in the upper echelon with Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce. I don't see that being a feasible option. My man said 1091. We're gonna save this. And I'll look foolish if I'm wrong, but I don't think my man gonna get 1,100 yards. And oh, by the way, that man had trouble staying healthy last year, so it's like a double whammy now. Yeah, that's the thing, right? So my thing is Davante Adams is going to be a terror, and when we get into wide receivers and running backs next week, we'll talk about some of the changes because I think that's going to factor in when you start thinking about where you want to take some of these guys. Factor in big time because now it becomes about the quarterback. Some wide receivers are going to benefit with their new quarterback. Some aren't. All right. Now, I'll give you guys one more minute to take any more questions, and then I'm probably going to call it a night and chillax because it has been a very long week at work. So if there's no more questions that come up, this will be fun. This was fun, man. I enjoy it. Appreciate the folks who showed up. We're going to get this thing going again next week at 8 o'clock. I think next week's episode is going to be a little longer because there's going to be a lot more to go through. Tight ends, quarterbacks, defense, special teams, and kickers are pretty self-explanatory. But I think next week we're going to get into the raw. We're going to start talking about some of these positions. So get your questions ready. And become a patron. Go to www.patreon.com/PantherNationPC. We have a fantasy and draft tier. We got, which is $10 a month. We do the draft coverage. We also, and Rashad goes to training camp, and he be out here paying attention to certain players. And I know what you guys are probably going to pick. The Patreon folks have already picked them. The folks in Discord already made those selections most likely. But Rashad probably haven't asked yet, but once you will get an opportunity to ask about who you want to see. And we got the interviews going with some of the former Panthers players and some current. And we give away game tickets for MVP. Now, that being said, make sure if you haven't already, like the channel, subscribe to the channel. You know what I'm saying? Follow us on Twitter at Panther Nation PC. You can follow me individually on Twitter at ChampD1012. It's been fun, guys. I'll see you guys next week, and I'm out. Peace.